Hello and welcome to the Outer Limits of InnerScience, where we explore human transformation, consciousness, and the science of meditation in order to empower people to heal and thrive. My name's Andrew Wright, and with me today, as always, Dr. Hillari Hamilton. Hello, Hillari.
Hey, Andrew. I'm so excited about this episode. We just uncovered so much cool stuff.
Absolutely. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I would say to our community's heart, the community being the Catalyst community that's part of InnerScience that funds the data that happens and gets collected at Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreats. And of course, the greater community of Dr. Joe's community, they're always excited because we're talking about random number generators, we're talking about heart coherence, we're talking about consciousness, and we're talking about ourselves, which is the coolest part.
Yeah, I love it. And it's just how we're all connected. We're connected globally. And I love our Catalyst community because they're global. So it's so cool that we can use this work in a way that we know we're all connected and that we can affect each other just by putting our attention on our heart, radiating out. And we have the evidence to prove that this is true.
It's so cool. The science really is what makes it all possible to overcome those of us that have those very analytical minds and are just like, wait a minute, is this real? Well, we can see it and we can prove it. And the numbers are amazing. The correlation, the chances, as Dr. Joe says, 100%, you do the math. This is happening to you. This is a real effect. Or the p-values, the correlation of the numbers that this is statistically significant thing that is happening, and they're measuring it. And so that's how we change minds, and that's how we open up hearts. So many people come to events and do meditations and turn inward, and that's beautiful. But for those that have that doubt and want to know more, I think the research is what really allows us to open that door.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this is a time in history when people want to know, and the evidence proves how connected we truly are. And I love the paper that's going to be discussed in this next episode right here that was just published in Explore. And it's all about HeartMath Institute and Dr. Joe Dispenza and our coherence at Coherence Healings at his week-long events. And then the global picture at other random number generators and how they've been affected. It's really groundbreaking science, and it also allows people to have more trust, more confidence, to go into their meditations with less doubt. It just, it works in so many levels.
Yeah, and the HeartMath Institute has been around for decades, and this global consciousness program, the Global Coherence project, it's 2.0 now. It's been around forever, for decades, and it measures just the randomness of things around the world. And I remember hearing about, Super Bowls would have a little blip, 9/11 would have a blip, all these global events would have an effect on these random number generators. But what the paper is showing is that also large groups of people, even small groups of coherent people, have an effect on these random number generators that are all over the planet.
Yeah, and it's so cool when you put your attention on your heart center, which is that center of oneness, center of wholeness, and then you open that up and you connect to others. It means something. It means something in a big, big way. And I think the more people know what we're doing and how it's being measured, the more people are going to go, wow, I better pay attention to how I'm thinking and feeling because it's affecting the people around me. And if I have an elevated emotion when I'm around different people, it's going to impact them as well as yourself. And it just allows you to be the greater version of yourself when you put your heart into a coherent state.
Absolutely. And we're definitely affecting the field, our own field and the field around us. And there's a ripple effect going around the world. And the cool part is it's measurable.
Yeah, so cool. We're on the cutting edge.
Well, our guest today is the lead researcher for the recently published Global Coherence Study. Let's welcome the principal data scientist at the HeartMath Institute, Nachum Plonka. Nachum, welcome.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey,
Hillary, and everyone.
Welcome. And I thought before we get started, because the HeartMath has created a heart lock-in, if you could be so kind and lead us in a heart lock-in. But before we do that, maybe you can tell the audience what a heart lock-in is all about.
Sure. Yeah, heart lock-ins, one of our favorite techniques at HeartMath. We like to use them even in our meetings at work, often that we start off with a heart lock, and then it's a really short practice that lets you drop into your heart and feel a little more connected to the people that you're joined together with. So it usually helps smooth things along for the rest of the call. So I'm going to start the heart lock in now. And so you're welcome to close your eyes or soften your gaze, something that just helps you get a little more internal, focusing on your internal sensations, feelings. We're going to start with what's called heart-focused breathing. So breathe into your middle of your chest. You can imagine it's going in and out of your heart. Breathe slower and deeper, keeping a rhythm that's comfortable, but slowing it down. And you might notice some changes in whatever you were feeling or thinking inside, or, there's distractions come up. That's okay. Just keep coming back, that slower heart-focused breathing. Next, we're going to evoke a good feeling inside ourselves. So we may be feeling tension or calm or all sorts of things, but we're going to just add into the mix something that we call it HeartMath a renewing emotion. It's anything that you think of as feeling good. It could be calm, but it could be excitement. Could be peace, love, appreciation. And the way that, if you need a little sort of boost, kickstart for that, imagine something or someone that helps you feel that way. You might think of a pet or a nature scene, or you want to pick something or someone simple where you kind of easily get a bit of a good feeling when they come to mind. See if there's anything changing inside you. You see, keep visualizing that. Keeping your heart focused, breathing slower and deeper in the heart. And then we're going to add one more element, and that is to, now that you have some sort of good feeling in you, maybe it's subtle, maybe it's strong, start to radiate that out. So you're imagining that that is coming out of your heart or wherever it is in your body, and it's growing, it's going beyond the boundaries of your body to the room around you, to the people in your vicinity, maybe in other rooms throughout your building or house or space, and even expanding that good feeling is expanding out of you all the way to your city or town, all the way to the planet even. You're just imagining that positive, that heart quality is spreading from you. You're sharing it. You're sharing it with the others in this call. Sharing it with the community. You may be able to feel a little bit of them as they're sharing it with you. And then finally, we're gonna zoom back down. We're gonna share that just with ourselves. Whatever that sharing we were doing, the heart quality, share it with yourself. Receive from yourself. And then slowly, we're going to transition back to the call, but you take your own time. So you can start to blink your eyes open, you look around a little bit, and just when you're ready, we can come back to the screen here, or to the call, and keep that heart quality in the background, but on the foreground, we'll have a conversation.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nachum. That was so nice.
Very nice. It for me, it took off the edges of the last cup of coffee I drank, or these little spikiness just got rounded and then expanded and came back to this
Huh.
present moment. Thank you for that. That was cool.
Yeah. Thank you for participating. We're all doing it together,
So
really.
so what is the effect? What can what can you see when you look at the effects of what we just did?
Yeah. Uh, so the heart lock-in is one of our, it's one we definitely like to study in all sorts of contexts. Certainly, we measure for the person performing the heart lock-in. There's a personal heart coherence, a measurable quantity that tells us that we've come to learn and study, that it shows you're feeling good, so to speak, or has a lot of benefits, like physiologically, you're in a better state, you're performing in your day better. So that's all we can measure, that coherent state, as we have at some of even Dr. Joe's events. And then it also has a kind of synchronizing effect. So there's an effect where right, because the heart lock-in is one of our more also outward focused practices where you're connecting with others, and we can see that the hearts of the people sometimes, especially easy if people are in the same call or room, we can see they're all syncing up. So that's really at the edges of some of our research, but already seeing some cool results there too.
Yeah. So what got you interested in this kind of stuff? Or let's even back up earlier than that. What got you interested in what is it that you studied at Stanford?
Physics, yeah.
Computational physics.
Yeah.
Like how do you, when you're 10 years old, did you say that's what I want to do? Or is there somebody in your life who influenced you?
Yeah, I love that. I like that when I was 10. That's probably a good choice of age where I started like doing things that weren't just school or hanging out. Um, I actually started with coding. I started coding when I was a kid. I still remember like actually writing code on paper in class when I just making these little games and stuff. So I always had, I guess, a technical like math, science interest. And um, yeah, there's all sorts of fun stories along the way there. But in the end, went through really a science path all the way through till university, and started in engineering actually, and realized that I wanted to really work a lot more with the ideas than just with my hands building stuff. So that got me into physics, and I loved it. I just loved understanding how the world works, having a way to like a language to really break it down and say, oh, this is how it works, and I could predict how this works because So, um, yeah. So that in the end, I really love physics. I went for a PhD in the end. I loved quantum physics particularly because it was so bizarre. It threw me for a loop for about an entire semester of trying, and then of that course. But then like once I got it, I was just like, this is crazy. This is like magic, but it's not. We apparently, all these
Yeah.
physicists in the room believe this works. We've done experiments. So yeah, that's kind of like the scientific track. I just went down that for a while.
And
And then
did that lead you to reach out to HeartMath, or how did you end up at HeartMath? Because I can understand that quantum physics opens everything up. So how did you end up at HeartMath?
yeah, I so I love to say I've got a heart and a math side of me. So I gave you the math side, but there's a heart side too
Oh, I
that
like that.
I needed, or I wouldn't end up there. Yeah. Um, I um So that came especially more in my adulthood. I would say I started to really sort of question a lot of things, and I grew up an observant Jew, so I was kind of like, okay, what is this we believe in there's something more than just our physical senses, but that kind of led me down this path of really asking, well, what is that all about? And um, I so that got me meditating starting about 13 years ago. That's been a steady practice, like trying to sort of experience my heart and experience consciousness, experience more than just our physical reality, in an attempt to, like, I guess there's a scientist in there and understand what's really going on, and there's also like, what am I doing with my life? How do I direct? I feel like that's ultimately where direction comes from. So, I went through a lot, on kind of on the side, really, not as part of my career until I had been a data scientist in the tech industry in Silicon Valley for some time, and I'm like, I can't only be doing the heart stuff like on the side. This has to be part of my life, and raising a family. I got to have a full time job here, so that's how I ended up at HeartMath. Well, a long search really of how to get my career to match better that side of things, and so lucky and grateful to be at HeartMath at this point.
What a beautiful bridge, and I feel like that is what we do. That's what inner science does. That's what Dr. Joe does with his work, and everybody's finding this balance of, uh, well, like you said, heart and math, or heart and brain, 3D and 5D, and it's just such an honor and a privilege to get to do what we get to do. And it's one thing to experience it, but what you guys are doing is able to measure it and quantify it and tell that story, which is amazing.
Right.
Yeah, it's so wonderful that we're all drawn to this type of work, and I think it's a cool time in history that the world is ready for this kind of stuff, and that leads me to think about the paper that was just published
Yes.
in Explore journal or Explore magazine. Can you lead us into that and how that paper came about, and what how is it impacting everyone?
Yeah, yeah. So the we've been one of the main things that we're studying here at HeartMath actually is more of a global coherence picture, a picture of global consciousness. We have a Global Consciousness Project 2.0, and um, within so the way the way we look at things with that is we have these devices, these random number generators, um, which is basically something you could buy in a hardware store. But we have them custom built for the project, but they just spit out random numbers like flipping a coin, heads, tails. I imagine doing that thousands of times a second. And but the so that's a pretty random thing. But what's weird is that when there's some coherence in the vicinity of these random number generators, something among people in the vicinity with their attention, their emotion, they're together in something, then the devices also become less random and they start to show patterns of coherence among them, that they are also in connection with each other in some way, which is really bizarre. It's really bizarre. I've been doing this, working with these for like 5 years, and it's every so often I'm just like, what? Like, what's going on? These are not supposed to do this. Um, so, but they've become these detectors. There's been a whole decades of history at this point of research to show statistically that this is a real effect. And so we brought these devices. Now, Dr. Joe has a tower of them that he brings to many of his events. And there are 40 of these 40 of these RNGs are up on the stage, and they're meant to detect something, what's going on in the room. Meanwhile, as part of the larger project, we have these devices all over the world. These RNGs are scattered around the world. We're up at over 1,000 RNGs, and
Mm.
so there's all sorts of research going on around that. This paper that we just published, there's a peer-reviewed publication came out in Elsevier's Explorer journal. That is I'd say in a way, our first technical, scientific, statistical paper that came out on this topic. on this Global Consciousness 2.0 network. And it came out with Dr. Joe and with collaborators there to show that somehow that tower of random number
Mm.
generators in the room is connecting, is correlating with the global network during coherence healings, during those kind of those climactic parts of Dr. Joe's events, and the most, the part where we would expect it, the part where they're coherent, where people are coherent. So it seems like the actions that are going on among this highly focused group of individuals is being picked up around by this global network.
And these are networks that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Like they're not connected to anything, right? The devices, the RNGs that are around the world, they're independent. And are they each a little tower as well?
Each of them is usually just one of the tower has these 10 devices. Each one has 4 RNGs inside, so it comes out to 40. In someone's home, around the world, you've got just one of those devices, and they're everywhere, every continent pretty much. I don't think we've hit Antarctica yet, but
Wow.
So it's fascinating. It's something. This is one of those moments where I'm looking at the research as I'm doing it. I'm just getting chills. I'm just like, what is happening?
Yeah, and earlier you said you after a semester of studying quantum physics, you began to understand it. And doesn't this connect to that? Like there's something going on here that we don't quite understand of how this group of coherent individuals is having an effect around the planet, other than the fact that we just all kind of experienced it at the beginning of this call doing a heart lock-in together. But what you're saying is we have a real measurable effect that's essentially provable. Like we can show that there's a correlation.
Right. So I hear you asking, like, so, and how does quantum physics come into that? And right, which is always that's a tough, that is interesting and challenging. So it's like, but it is a leading theory as to how such a thing could work, especially when you talk non-local. Like, how is this affecting around the planet? Um, it, so there are. I mean, it would make. I don't think within this project we have yet proven quantum mechanics is the mechanism, but it's certainly one of the leading theories that say, electromagnetism is another leading one, and it could be a combination of those. But yeah, we do real quantum mechanics experiments, and I hope we have set up this network in a way that we can ask these questions. We're just gonna drill real deep.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So, when you started doing this work with Dr. Joe, with the random number generators in the room, in the ballroom, when we do the coherence healings, I know they're doing it the whole event, but you see that big outside of normal during the coherence healings when we're all in a coherent state. When did you decide to look at the broader picture, the other random number generators around the world? Did you look at it from the very beginning, or was that something that you came up with later on in the project?
Yeah, good question. The first Dr. Joe event that we had a tower was way back in Orlando in 2022, November. And then, that was like we brought a tower sort of custom. And then now in this paper was published based on data starting in the beginning of 2024 when we had an established tower. But back then in 2022, that was our first time using that tower. And I recall that we did, of course we first looked at the tower, but because in every other scenario we're looking at the global network, it was just a natural extension. Oh, let's look at what happened in the global network. And I remember that event. There were 3 coherence healings, and I was looking at the charts, and I was like, those look pretty similar. I wasn't going to make a lot out of it, just out of 3 coherence healings, but that's when it started. And so in 2024, we're like, okay, got to look at that again, and that's when it was getting weird. Like I just kept looking at coherence healing after coherence healing, and it was happening again and again until we got the paper is 15 coherence healings to get the results. So yeah.
And one of the Catalyst, who's on the call right now, is asking if you looked at other synchronizing effects surrounding the retreat outside of just the heart lock-ins or the coherence healings.
Um,
I can
yeah.
rephrase that if you want.
Yeah, I lost it for a sec, but yeah, no, you're saying were there other of these type of synchronizing effects outside of just Dr. Joe events? And by synchronizing, I guess you mean like having this local global connection.
Yeah, but within the retreats, the paper presented the coherence healings, I believe, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so the question is, what about, were there times that there was synchronization, or where it looks like they were dancing together when we weren't in a coherence healing, but some other meditation? Or did you
Yeah.
not look at that?
So we did, we looked at that sort of generally. We didn't look at that specific meditations. And what was interesting actually, at least to me, was that we did not see it happening in general at the event, which to me was actually a helpful control to help sort of prove this was a real thing happening. That it was specifically during coherence healings that this happened. Now, I haven't looked, there may be certain individual meditations that we haven't checked at it during which this would have happened.
And it kind of makes sense to me because it's a week-long event and he teaches us and we have the experience of the meditations all the way up to those 3 coherence healings. So it's we're learning as we're going to be in that coherent state. And I think sometimes it's easier to radiate love to someone else than it is to yourself. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the electromagnetic field, and is there something that you guys have done to kind of control for that, or to show that it is electromagnetic? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Um, we have played with this Faraday fabric. So we put on, and particularly at some of the Dr. Joe events, especially actually in 2025, but we started this in 2024. We brought a second tower to the event, same setup as the one that's usually in the room, but this one is covered in this Faraday fabric, which gives it some degree of electromagnetic shielding. And we had and the idea there is to test, well, can I block the effect? If it's an electromagnetic effect, this will block it. If it's not, it'll still get through. And the preliminary results there were that it seemed to be blocking. We've done some more experiments in this past year, and we're not as sure. The funny thing with our random number generators is there's a lot going on with them there. So to pick out the signal from the noise, you have to be careful and repeat things. And so I'd say the jury's still out, but that is the kind of experiments we're doing to test it.
And I know there's some very technical minded people that are listening to this. The device itself, the RNG, is electromagnetic, or the chip is electromagnetic. Is there a way that you can account for that? And I know it's inside a Faraday cage, but it's still a device that's running with electricity, right?
Right. So the Faraday fabric is meant to block between the device and the people. So if the people their coherence healing is somehow, connected to the device, we're trying to block that. But you could ask, like you said, what about influences from electromagnetism inside the device? And for that, this is actually a standard process in random number generators, that what's called whitening. And it's basically a process of further randomizations to get rid of any possible effects that would have happened because of the electromagnetic effects within the circuit itself, particularly actually temperature. Temperature is a big one. If you didn't do anything, you just took a raw voltage out of the whole quantum process of a random number generator, the temperature would just push it all around and you wouldn't see anything. So this is older than us, process of how to deal with this kind of thing. And we've got the cryptographic experts who built this device on that.
Nice. Nice. You know, it's funny you mentioned that the same effect happens in the ballroom when we play music. The temperature has an effect on the frequencies and the humidity because the speed of the sound traveling through the air, it's going to affect the higher frequencies or the lower frequencies depending on what's going on. So it's got to be the same idea. And yeah, we've figured out how to account for that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so exciting that Dr. Joe is a part of it with HeartMath and that InnerScience has funded the analysis of all of this data with this new paper being published. What do you think this means for other researchers? Because it seems like you're uncovering what consciousness is all about.
Yeah. Um, what is it, right? And what does it mean for other researchers? Like, we sometimes think of the category, different like spheres of research. Researchers, the ones who are open to these kind of things with consciousness, the ones who are like not ready maybe for a paradigm shift. Um, and I think I think both of those types really benefit in different ways. Like for people who are open to ideas about, our consciousness and how it can impact our environment. Um, I think it's still new and useful and helpful to show, hey, this is grounded in science. You can talk about it with your friends in some way if you give it some thought. Um, so there's that piece, and then there's and I feel like we're still calling in those people, still really building that community, and I think it helps with that. For the probably greater populace who, for whom this would be an unusual, abstract kind of thing, I think it's starting, we're starting to get our leg in. We're starting to hopefully, put things on a map where the regular average scientist says, oh, this is a published paper. This is my language. There seems to be something here. I'm not sure I really believe it. Do I believe, and go through a whole process with it, start a conversation. So I think, each step by step, we're normalizing some of these concepts and the way that consciousness impacts us, our environment,
Yeah.
and hopefully as people learn that, they learn to behave differently, really, and that's kind of HeartMath's mission. Change your mind, change your heart.
So that's ultimately the goal. That's, well, not the goal, but the part of the purpose of doing the research, right? Is to have an effect, to make some change in the world, and if we can show it scientifically, once you experience it, once you know it, then
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
almost don't need the science. But the science is what makes it possible for institutions to change, for paradigms to change, and for people to overcome their doubts, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and I just think it opens their minds to the greater picture of when you start studying the immaterial rather than the material, there's so much more there in the immaterial than the material. And I think it's going to shift everything. I think with this paper just coming out, I think people are really going to open up to, okay, what's bigger than what this material world is all about? I mean, I think that's what the paper demonstrates. I know Andrew and I put it in an AI system and we listened to it and we both got very emotional just hearing the paper. And I think it's such a big impact in where we're going.
Wow. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, last year, InnerScience funded HeartMath Institute to do the analysis of this research. And what are some of the other studies that you guys are doing that have been ongoing, or what's coming up in the future, if we can talk about it?
Sure. Um, Wow, and there's studies within the context of Dr. Joe's work. There's outside.
Mhm.
So should we start with within the Dr. Joe inner science framework? I'm guessing is
Yeah,
probably
that'd be
good.
great.
Yeah. Um. So some of the in this past year, um, we've continued. So on the RNG side, of course, getting this publication was the big one. But in there's been other work there as well, starting to look at replicating that study, looking at how it is a really unusual like, it's a really unusual result that a room of a couple thousand people impacts the planet. And
Yeah.
we're trying to, it's, that's definitely still coming under scrutiny, and we're asking our own questions there. So we're trying to see if there's a way that we can uh, y- bolster that hypothesis or reject it. But by looking at the pattern of localization, looking at um, how the you say I have a Dr. Joe's event is in Cancun, and I saw, whoa, the whole planet, something's happening. But was it Cancun's in Mexico? So did Mexico feel it more? Like there's a bunch of RNGs in Mexico. Did
Yeah.
did the
Good
U.S.,
question.
which is pretty close too, did that feel it more? So if we start to, and we have some results that are pointing at that the tower is somehow connecting to the immediate countries surrounding it, more than perhaps the planet, more than perhaps the devices in general in that country are connecting to each other. So we're looking at that, and we have some preliminary results there, which would bolster that idea that this actually kind of is centered on the event. Um, so that's on the RNG side. And then we've got all this heart rhythm research that we've done in the past year. We've looked at several of Dr. Joe's events where we strap people up with what's called a bodyguard. It's a heart, funny name, but it's just it's a heart monitor that you can wear kind of 24 hours. And we're looking at people during coherence healings. We're looking at them at other points of the event. We've found some wild results that happen to some people, some healees during a coherence healing. Where the devices were kind of going offline a little because things were just getting too. There were lots of weird stuff going on in that woman's experience. There's one woman there who had this wild experience, and it kind of coordinated with the device shutting off and then coming back on again later. And then we're seeing even just in heart rhythms responses to healings. The way the Healy might be physically just lying there, but when people turn their hands towards the Healy, suddenly their heart rate is increasing and something's happening. What else? We're looking at the way that youth and elders, when we pair them up together over the course of the event, we measure their heart rhythms the course of the event. Their synchronization is increasing over the course of the event. They're getting closer to each other, and their hearts show it. And we've done a radiate study, as we call it, a study where we look at how people in the room, with Dr. Joe guiding them through a sort of a version, and you could almost say, of the heart lock, and we did here today, sending heart to people in another room, a small group, and that group doesn't hear Dr. Joe. They don't know what's happening. They're just sitting there doing their own little meditation for 2 hours straight. But those specific points that they're getting love sent to them, we can see it. They're receiving it, and we see it in their heart.
Yeah, that's profound. I think that's amazing. And that pulls the placebo out of it because they don't know that all these people are putting their attention on them with the same, you know, amount of love. And I think this is a way that once people know this is how we can heal the world as a
Yeah.
collective.
And this is why the inner science community and our supporters, the Catalyst community, absolutely love this work and want to support it, because it's really bringing this information to the world, which is really cool. And I want to just give you some rapid fire questions that's coming from the Catalyst community that's listening to this right now. So you could give us short answers, long answers, however, whatever feels right. One is just, some of these are just logistical. Like, is there a children's HeartMath program so
Oh,
that
wow.
kids could learn this?
Yeah, it's called. There is a general education sphere to HeartMath. There are people who work at that. What comes to mind right away is there's the Wise Heart app that we recently came out with as an award-winning app for kids, and that teaches kids about coherence, about just their day-to-day things that kids do, and it's fun, all these fun games. It does it through all these other games and videos, and had my daughter was one of actually the pilot kids who tried it out and gave some feedback. So um, they yeah, so there's that's one of, I know that's definitely one of our leading things for kids, but we also work in schools a lot, and there's probably more there that our education team has to say on that.
Great. And if you guys go to heartmath.org, I'm sure there's more information about that for you and for your kids. Here's another question. Very much logistical, physical. When we're focusing on the heart and doing a heart lock, is the focus on the center of the body where the chakra or energy center is, or is it literally the heart, or does it matter?
Yeah, I want to say it doesn't matter so much, but I know that we do have a technical, probably research-backed choice on that question, which is the center is more the energetic heart. So it is actually the center. It's not the left. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
And you said that's research informed? Like you guys did some research on that? Or there is some
I'm
out there?
I'd have to look into it, so I'm not sure. But usually
Yeah.
when we choose at HeartMath a specific, like I know we have a specific choice on that one. Usually it's
Mhm.
research backed, but I'd have to look it up to confirm.
No, that's great. Well, that answers the
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
Here's another one. What is the heart actually doing when it goes into coherence? Like what's the effect or what's changing?
yeah. Um, so it's your, so your pulse, right? Is just beats per minute. And so your pulse can speed up and slow down. So the coherent heart has a very smooth rhythm of speeding up and slowing down in kind of this like sine wave, as we'd call it, but just like a nice wave-like pattern. And as um, so it is meant to vary. It is, so my pulse might go between say 60 and 80, and it does that usually over the course of about a 10-second interval. Um, and that's actually a particular time length. So that's what the heart looks like. If your heart is coherent, it's got that smooth varying pattern.
Very cool.
So
Yeah.
interesting that when you're in the past or in an imagined future and you're not in the present moment, I'm sure your heart's not coherent. Do you have to be in the present moment, right? With coherence?
I I don't know that. No, I don't think it has to be present, because it's not necessarily presence. It's actually um it could be associated with feeling good. So someone could be not even doing the breath consciously, meaning the heart math breath, the slow one we did. Um, you could just be really deeply into some memory of something you loved, right? Which is a
Ah,
past. You're in the past there, but your body is right now experiencing all those
that's
good
true.
feelings, good hormones, and that can get you coherent. Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
cool.
this is another question from the listeners. And I know this has been talked about before at events, but our understanding is that sometimes individual HRV levels go down, they're lower during coherence healings. And yet, is there a connection between that and the higher level of coherence of the RNG network?
Interesting. Yeah. So you're pointing at that the personal HRV coherence can go down, because and it is true that because Dr. Joe has a lot of very activating kind of meditations sometimes, and sometimes, so they're not designed necessarily for this quantity of heart coherence that we measure at HeartMath all the time. The coherence healings and I've experienced them myself, I would say are right up there at the top in terms of ones that I would expect you to actually look coherent during them, because there's so much heart opening, there's so much heart flow, right? Um, when there's that focus on the heart, that's often where you can measure heart coherence. So, and then we saw it across the global network during a coherence healing. So I would imagine that actually those kind of go together. You actually do have an increased heart coherence personally and globally there. Um, I'm not sure whether, I imagine it's possible to have a decreased personal coherence and an increased global coherence, but that would be perhaps more unusual.
Interesting. There's so many possibilities, and I know the Catalyst community always have a lot of ideas for research. And I know for me, I think one idea that'd be really cool to take a look at is to see all things equal between coherence healings, but we played different music, and there it would be really interesting for us to know, does the music have an effect? Or so we've got the same audience, the same everything. It's a different day probably, but we've changed up the music tracks, and is there some effect there? Is that something that kind of thing that you guys could look at?
Yeah, yeah. And it's so fun to like bring in all these different elements, right? So,
Yeah.
music, I know I've experienced that too. Some songs just, I could feel it, through the body, and I'm sure that some of the music that's chosen is impacting the room that Dr. Joe is with at that time. So certainly that's something we could look at from a coherence perspective, whether it's people who are, and this is probably where I'd prefer to start, is their personal HRV coherence in the room, right? Or maybe not even coherence. Sometimes it's just heart rate kind of gives you just the way that it, like we've seen during coherence healings, that somewhat the Healy's lying there and they turn their hands towards the Healy, and then the Healy has just an increase in heart rate. It's not a coherence thing. So sometimes there's those signals that, oh, they're picking up something, they're receiving something, perhaps. So doing some sort of testing, taking the events with A/B testing, basically. You take events with one song, and then at different meditations, you've done the other song. You take those same periods, right? And you, in aggregate over a bunch of them, you see if they look different in their heart rate, in their coherence. Does the tower on the stage look different, right? You can look at all those things.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's the list goes on and on. I'm getting all these questions about, can a single person be the initiator or the original source of the coherence in a group? And like to dive down to figure that out, there's so many questions that arise, and so many variables. Another question is, does somebody need to be in a meditative state in order to receive heart coherence from a meditating group? And these are all great questions, but
Yeah.
we can only answer so many research questions at a time, right?
Right, right. I like something that maybe speaks to both of those questions is an experiment um, that we like to talk about that happened some years ago, and there's 40 people, and three, and they were in groups of four. 3 out of 4 of them were doing a coherence practice. They had practiced beforehand. They'd been taught this is how to do it. They practiced maybe 2 weeks and that's how. And they're sitting here, and they're just incoherent. The fourth person sitting there, they don't know what's going on. They've never even learned what coherence is. Um, Probably not necessarily meditating. They're just sitting there, but they're being measured. And when the rest of the group is coherent, so is the fourth person. And this happens across that entire group. So you could be receiving without even like knowing it. And that's the power that we have, right? We don't have to necessarily, not everyone has to know what Dr. Joe's work is, but if we're doing the work, we're already broadcasting that to others.
You
Yeah, I
know,
love.
you
Go
know,
ahead, Hillary.
okay, the Catalyst community, what we do on a monthly basis is we do a monthly meditation, and there's sometimes hundreds, maybe thousands of people around the world, and we do one of Dr. Joe's meditations that he created just for us. It's called A Change for the World. I was wondering, and I'm sure our community, because they support the research in such a big way, maybe we can use your Global Coherence app as a community and see how our coherence is. Is that something we could do?
That is an interesting idea. Yeah, we could definitely set that up because we use the Global Coherence app to measure coherence across hearts across the world, whoever wants to plug in. Um, whether they're using the device clipped to their ear to measure the heart, whether I believe you can use the flashlight and camera even to measure your heart. And that I know you can do that, but I believe even in that app you can do it. And so you could have the community meditating and measuring their heart. And we create a group in the app, and it tells you what's the coherence across the group. So definitely
Oh,
we could
yeah.
do that.
That'd be great because we have Catalyst community, you know, our community is all over the world too. So that would really be an exciting experience with all of
Yeah.
us.
And it'd be so easy to do. We do pop-up meditations where we could say to the community, hey, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we're all going to meditate. And 3, 4, 600 people show up. And we could all say, okay, now start up your app and let's log into there too and see what the results are. So, Nachum, is there a way to control for something like the observer effect, or is that just such a big question? Like, okay, we're doing what we can in 3D reality, but there's not a way to control the 5D aspect.
Hmm. Can you say a little more about that? What you mean? What part of the
Yeah.
observer
So
effect? And
Yeah, so as scientists, here's my bias is I feel like if a scientist comes into the room and they say, "Oh, none of this is true. I don't buy any of this. He's a charlatan up on stage, Dr. Joe or whatever." They just have a disbelief that their disbelief is going to have an effect, whether it's on the HRV or RNG or whatever study they're doing, because they are the observer. They are also creating reality along with all of us. And if somebody comes along like yourself or Roland, who's believes in what's going on and has an open mind and an open heart, and I would hope every scientist would, but if somebody came in with a bias of like, nope, this isn't true, I don't believe it, isn't that going to affect the outcome in our quantum world?
hmm. Yeah, I think that right. We once we step into the world of researching consciousness, you have to incorporate the consciousness of the researchers, of the participants, right? These are all part of that mix. And really, and especially, and the random number generators, for example, are being, you could say, pushed around by all those influences. And so the way we deal with that, right, is to set up, clear hypotheses of, say, when, like in a coherence healing, we believe we're going to see at least a tip in a certain direction, right? So all those competing forces kind of end up as just what looks like randomness very often. That is the sort of Gaussian noise of the world. Um, but when you layer into that an unusual situation where lots of people are coherent, right? So then that starts to peak out of all that other stuff, and then you compound it by repeating the event. But there's a question that we're really sort of picking up all sorts of influences. And as long as we can demonstrate, well, this coherence healing period looks different than your usual, looks remarkably different, then that means we're picking up something different there.
Yeah. So exciting. And it just makes me think that in Dr. Joe's community, we also do something called remote coherence healings. And Inner Science has an authorized remote coherence healing group. It would be interesting to have a group of healers put their attention on a healee remotely and see how their brain changes, or how the people that are doing a remote coherence healing, if they become in sync, just like the random number generators. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, we have, there have been some non-local studies of heart rhythms. There have been studies where, like, for example, a couple, right, husband and wife, say, and they're on different continents, and they have them both hooked up to heart monitors. They tell one of the partners, start sending love. Think of your partner. Think, just think of how you love them, and just focus on that for a while. You see in their partner on the other continent a change in their heart rhythm, so they're picking
Yeah,
it
it's
up.
amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
it is
so
incredible.
glad
amazing.
we're a part of this with you, because it's
Yeah.
a tipping point with what's happening. It's historical, honestly, to say that we're all connected, and it's to be able to prove it is proving consciousness. What's proving something so big.
Malcolm, thank you so much. Any last thoughts, closing thoughts of where you see all this going or what excites you most?
Yeah. I mean, like we're continuing to do this work with InnerScience into the coming year. We've got more research planned, more radiate studies, more RNG deep dives. And so I'm excited for the science, and I'm excited for how I see this lighting up people's hearts. And I hope we light up the heart of humanity.
Me too.
Beautiful.
And what a great episode that was. And I really enjoyed that Nachum spent some time explaining what a heart lock-in is, and that he led us through that heart lock-in. It was so sweet and so wonderful. And our community really felt that.
Absolutely. He really embodies the work. And I love how to think that a person like that is coming to these events in his heart, open-hearted, open-minded, and doing such beautiful research. I think that's incredible to me. And I would wish that for anyone who comes to the events, that they come with an open mind and a coherent heart and are just ready to see what possibilities happen.
Yeah. And I loved when he said, I love the math and I love the heart. So he's a part of HeartMath. I thought that was super cute.
Yeah, and I also thought, and I wanted to actually ask him more about it, the balance between his religion too, and then his interest in quantum physics. Like quantum physics, like to me, that is the word God. That is source. That is like, it's such a, I mean, there's so many different words to describe it. Dr. Joe does that list when at the retreats where he lists wholeness and oneness and God, source, the void, all things, everything, nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that is so close to what religions are and what they're teaching us. And they're at their essence teaching us about love and caring for each other. And it's only, I don't know, certain individuals that create separation. But it would have been interesting to talk to him about that too.
Yeah, we'll have to do another episode with him. And I totally agree with you. It's like what we're actually quantifying is that all religions are, in the thread of all religions, it comes down to love. I think if we just drop that veneer of that there's separation with religions rather than, understanding that we're all connected. And I think this is what these projects are all about.
Yeah, and I love that the HeartMath Institute it is exactly that. Their heart and their math, and they're bringing the love, but they're also bringing the science, and that's so important. And that's what we want to do at InnerScience, and that's what we want to do for the Catalyst community. And for those of you listening to this podcast, we're wanting to build that same bridge. It's so important. And so the support that we get from the community really helps us continue to fund more research like this.
Yes. And so what we are is we explore human transformation, consciousness, and the science of meditation in order to empower people to heal and thrive. We're a mission-driven community shifting the paradigm of healthcare together.
Yes, absolutely. If you'd like to learn more about InnerScience, we're a nonprofit organization that funds groundbreaking scientific studies on the biological and physiological effects of meditation on the human body and also consciousness. So if you'd like to join our mission as a catalyst for change, please check out our website, innerscienceresearch.org. You can also learn more about HeartMath at heartmath.org. And you can also check out the retreats and what Dr. Joe Dispenza does at drjoedispenza.com. Thanks so much for joining us today.
See you in the field.